The Americans with Disabilities Act is 30 years old this month. The legislation has helped even the playing field for people living with disabilities. Joining us now is Emily Schumann, the Deputy Director of the Rocky Mountain ADA Center. Thank you for being with us, Emily. Could you tell us about what the center focuses on?
Absolutely. The Rocky Mountain ADA Center is one of 10 federally funded ADA centers in the nation. Our service area is Colorado, Montana, Wyoming, North Dakota, South Dakota, and Utah. And we provide information, training, and guidance on the Americans with Disabilities Act. So really anyone can give us a call or connect with us online and ask a question about what is their rights or responsibilities under the Americans with Disabilities Act. We have several online trainings that people can take if they just want to get more information on the Act. But, you know, we're strictly information, so we're not about enforcing the Americans with Disabilities Act, and we're not an advocacy agency either. So really anyone that's just curious about what the law says and how it applies to you, you know, we're going to be your resource for that.
And people living with disabilities are exempt from wearing masks in some cases. How does the ADA support them, especially with the big area that you cover across multiple states?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I would be a little bit cautious using the word exempt. I wouldn't necessarily say that the ADA exempts anyone from wearing masks. What the ADA provides is the opportunity for a person with a disability to request a reasonable modification of a policy or procedure. So if a business has a masks only policy in place, but a person with a disability perhaps can't wear a mask because of a medical condition, that could be anything from a respiratory issue, a sensory issue such as autism. You know, some people have to use their mouths to maneuver their wheelchairs. There are lots of reasons that a person might not be able to wear a mask. So in those cases, they can request a modification of that policy from the business. But that doesn't necessarily mean that the business has to just let them in without a mask. There are lots of ways to accommodate a person that don't involve letting them in without a mask. That could be simply assisting them with getting their items and then bringing them to their car, allowing for a virtual appointment, having a person sit in their car until it's time for their appointment and then texting them to come in. So there are lots of ways that businesses can work with people with disabilities without having to put the health of themselves and their other patrons at risk.
And what are the main points of the Americans with Disabilities Act?
Yeah, the Americans with Disabilities Act is the first comprehensive civil rights law for people with disabilities. There are 5 titles to the law, and it really just protects people with disabilities from discrimination in areas of public life. So that's anything from employment to access to businesses, to access to public programs such as, you know, your DMV, your local workforce center, anything of that nature. And it also provides some regulations around telecommunications. So that's why you see captioning on TV and things like that.
And where do we need to go from here in terms of rights for those with disabilities?
You know, it's really interesting because the ADA was passed in 1990. And that was a time where the internet really didn't exist, at least not in the way that it does today. And today, you know, the internet is really the #1 way that we're connecting with each other, especially, you know, via social media. And so we really need to see more regulation around accessibility in the digital space. The ADA really didn't include any regulations for website accessibility, social media accessibility, any sort of digital communications weren't really included in the ADA the way it was written back in 1990. So I would say, you know, that's what we're mainly focused on going forward is making sure that our digital world is accessible to people with disabilities and making sure that they're not getting left behind, especially in this age where, you know, in-person is becoming more difficult during this pandemic, and we're all really relying on digital communication a lot more.
Emily, thank you so much for joining us and providing all of that useful information. We have links to the Rocky Mountain ADA Center on our website, cbsdenver.com.